Rain carved restless rivers down the windshield as Rian Sol's car sliced through the bridge, headlights blurring into streaks of gold. His driver's knuckles whitened on the wheel. "They're still behind us!" he shouted. "Drive faster," Rian said quietly. Calm. Always calm. That's how the underworld had learned to fear him. The man who never raised his voice even when the world burned. But tonight, the world was burning him back. A shot cracked the air. The windshield exploded, glass splintering across Rian's face. The car veered, tires shrieking against wet asphalt. "Boss!" Impact. Metal screamed. Then the plunge, the car twisted through the guardrail, the city spinning upside down before the river swallowed everything. Silence. Cold. The sound of his heartbeat fading beneath the water. When Rian opened his eyes again, light stabbed at him. The sterile white of a hospital ceiling replaced the darkness. He tried to move, pain tore through his ribs. Machines beeped beside him like mechanical pity. A nurse entered, startled by his sudden awareness. "You're awake," she said softly. "Where are my men?" She hesitated. "No one's come, Mr. Sol." His jaw clenched. "No one." The word cut deeper than any bullet. Weeks passed. His body healed, but the man in the mirror did not. The cane, the limp, the scars, they mocked him. He'd once ruled a city that trembled at his name. Now the mirror refused to recognize him. He stopped answering calls. He stopped opening the curtains. Then, one morning, his nurse, the last voice brave enough to break the silence, said quietly, "There's life outside those walls, sir. Even broken wings catch wind if they try." He ignored her. But that night, her words wouldn't leave. The next day, he stepped out for the first time in months. His driver took him through the veins of Hanul City, a world reborn without him. New names filled the whispers. Old debts were forgotten. And then he saw it, a narrow street washed in soft light, a small boutique tucked between towers of glass. Its sign read Velour Moon. "Stop," he said. The driver blinked. "Here?" "Yes." Inside, warmth met him like a language he'd forgotten. The air smelled of cedar and jasmine, the hum of quiet music filling the space. Dresses hung like ghosts of dreams. Behind the counter stood a woman, hair cropped short, eyes alive with something he couldn't name. "Welcome to Velour Moon," she said, studying him. "You look like someone who's been running from the rain too long." He froze. "I'm fine," she smiled. "You don't look fine." He turned, ready to leave, but something about her voice stopped him. Not pity, not curiosity, just presence. "What's your name?" he asked. "Elara," she said. "And you are?" He hesitated. "Just Rian. Just Rian," she repeated, amused. "You don't look like a just anything." He almost smiled. Almost. He left without buying a thing. But he returned the next day. And again the day after that. Elara didn't ask who he was or why his eyes looked like they'd seen too many ghosts. She talked about fabrics, color, and the strange poetry of design, how thread could turn ruin into beauty. One afternoon, she caught him watching her rearrange a dress. "You come here a lot for someone who never buys anything," she said, teasing. "Maybe I like the quiet. Maybe you like me." He looked away, but his silence was answer enough. For the first time in months, he laughed soft, disbelieving. Elara froze at the sound, as if afraid it might vanish. "Don't stop," she said quietly. "It suits you." Days blurred into weeks. His limp grew lighter, his reflection less foreign. He'd never meant to care, yet here he was, lingering after closing, walking her home, listening to her hum off key and realizing the world had sound again. Still, some nights he felt it, the old life stirring beneath the calm, the ache of unfinished wars. And far across the city, another man felt it too. Cade Juan leaned back in his leather chair, swirling whiskey. "So," he said, smirking, "the king breathes after all." A subordinate bowed his head. "He keeps to himself, sir. No guards. Visit some woman's shop. Cade's smile sharpened. Perfect. He set the glass down, watching the ice melt. Let him think he's safe. Let him taste peace. Then we'll see how quickly he chokes on it. The next morning, Elara found Rian staring out the boutique window, lost in thought. What's out there? She asked. Everything I can't go back to. Then stop looking back. He turned, meeting her gaze. You talk like the world never broke you. Oh, it did, she said softly. That's how I learned where not to step. There was something in her voice, something that hinted she too had walked through darkness. But Rian didn't ask. Not yet. He stayed until closing, helping her arrange mannequins. When she locked the door, the city was quiet, bathed in silver rainlight. Walk me home? She asked. He hesitated, then nodded. If you don't mind slow company. I don't mind at all. They walked in silence. Not the heavy kind, but the easy kind, the kind that feels like breathing. At her doorway, she looked up at him and said, For someone who claims he's broken, you stand pretty tall. He gave a faint smile. That's only because you don't see the cracks. Maybe I do, she whispered. And maybe they make you real. He wanted to reply, but couldn't. His chest felt too full. So he just nodded and watched her disappear inside. Later, as he returned to the car, headlights flared behind him, lingering too long. The same black sedan. The same watching eyes. Rian didn't look back. But inside, something cold and familiar unfurled. Peace, it seemed, had an expiration date. The first warning came quietly, a face Rian didn't recognize in the crowd across the street, a newspaper held upside down. Then the car again. The same black sedan that always seemed to arrive before sunset. Rian pretended not to notice, but his body remembered danger like a song. The small tremor in his hand wasn't fear, it was memory waking up. Elara noticed his distance. You've been somewhere else lately, she said one afternoon, draping silk on a mannequin. Just tired. That's not it. He looked up, and for a moment she saw it, the old hardness in his eyes, the one that didn't belong in quiet places. You don't have to tell me, she said softly. Just don't shut me out. He wanted to say her name, to explain that the world he'd crawled out of had no space for softness. But before he could, her phone buzzed, pulling her away. He watched her go, and then his own phone lit up with an unlisted number. He almost didn't answer. But old instincts won. Still breathing, Rian? The voice on the other end was like oil and smoke. Cade, Rian said evenly. You always were hard to kill. Guess I'll have to try harder. You already tried once. And yet here you are, limping around boutiques and pretending to be human. It's almost cute. What do you want? Cade chuckled. You had your empire. I have it now. But that woman of yours, Rian's jaw tightened. She's not part of this. She is now. You should have stayed dead. The line clicked, dead. Rian stared at his reflection in the shop window. The rain had begun again, soft but relentless, like time mocking him. He'd thought he could escape the world that built him. He was wrong. The next day, he went to Velour Moon before it opened. Elara was startled when she saw him standing by the door, soaked and pale. Rian! What happened? We need to talk. The weight in his voice stopped her breath. He walked past her, every step deliberate. You're in danger, he said simply. Her brow furrowed. From who? Someone I used to know. Used to? He met her eyes. Used to lead. Silence. The air thickened between them. You were, she started. The stories you've heard, he said, cutting her off. The ones about the man who ran this city. That was me. She took a step back, disbelief warring with fear. You're telling me the man people whispered about? The one who... Yes. And you thought hiding in a boutique would make you invisible? I thought it might make me human. Elara exhaled shakily. Why tell me now? Because Cade Juan knows about you, and he doesn't leave loose ends. She swallowed hard, eyes glistening. So what? What do we do? You leave the city. Her voice broke into a sharp laugh. And you? I stay. So you can die for me? To keep you alive. Don't you dare decide that for me. Elara. No. Her voice rose. You don't get to love me halfway. You don't get to hide me from danger and call it protection. Rian froze. No one had ever spoken to him like that. She stepped closer, trembling. I don't care who you were. I only care who you are when you look at me. That man, the one right now, he's worth fighting for. Something broke inside him, quietly, like glass beneath a steady hand. He cupped her face, his thumb brushing away tears. You don't understand what men like Cade do. Then teach me, she whispered. He wanted to argue, but there was no winning against her resolve. She wasn't light in his darkness. She was the reason he could still see. 2 nights later, the attack came. It was closing time. Rain fell harder than usual, drumming against the windows. Elara was humming under her breath when the streetlight outside flickered and went out. Rian's head snapped up. Turn off the lights. What? Now. She obeyed. The boutique sank into dim silence. Rian drew a small pistol from his coat, an echo of the man he'd been. Through the reflection on the glass, he saw 2 figures outside. Then 3. They found us, he muttered. Elara's breath caught. Rian. Stay down. The door handle turned. Then the crash of shattering glass. Gunfire split the night. The mannequins exploded into clouds of silk and dust. Rian grabbed Elara, pulling her to the floor as bullets tore through the air. He waited for a pause, then rose fast, firing once clean, controlled. A man fell. Another charged. Rian's cane cracked across his face. Elara's scream cut through the chaos. A bullet grazed Rian's shoulder, spinning him backward. He stumbled but fired again. The last attacker dropped. Silence returned, thick and trembling. Elara crawled to him, her hands trembling as she pressed her scarf against his wound. You're bleeding. It's nothing. It's not nothing, her voice broke. Why didn't you tell me this would happen? He managed a weak smile. Would you have believed me? Tears streaked down her cheeks. You could have died. I've done worse. That's not funny. I wasn't joking. He tried to stand. She steadied him. Blood stained the floor, mixing with shards of glass. Sirens wailed somewhere in the distance too late. As always, stay still, she whispered, pressing the fabric harder against his shoulder. You're shaking, he murmured. So are you. I'm used to it. Well, I'm not. He looked at her, then really looked, and for the first time, the fear in his eyes wasn't for himself. Elara, he said quietly, I can't lose you. Then stop pushing me away. He didn't answer. He just reached for her hand, holding it until the sirens grew louder, until the night itself seemed to fade. When the paramedics burst in, Elara refused to let go. They tried to separate them, but her voice cut through the chaos. I'm going with him. Ma'am, I said I'm going. And as they carried him out, Rian heard her voice through the blur of lights, steady, unafraid. He realized then that she wasn't his weakness. She was his mirror, the proof that even broken kings could still be seen. Far across the city, Cade Juan poured himself another drink, watching the rain streak across his window. So, he murmured, a smile curling on his lips. The king bleeds again. He lifted the glass in a mocking toast. Let's see if he learns to crawl. When Rian woke, it wasn't to pain this time, but to warmth a soft hand clutching his. The hospital lights glowed dimly above him. His shoulder throbbed, his throat dry, but his heart was beating steadily. Elara sat by his bed, asleep, her head resting on his arm. Her hair was messy, her cheeks streaked with dried tears. He stared at her for a long moment. trying to understand how someone like her existed in a world like his. When she stirred, he said quietly, "You should have gone home." Her eyes fluttered open. "And leave you to your bad habits?" He almost laughed. "You're impossible. You keep saying that," she murmured, "but you keep surviving to say it again." Silence hung between them, not empty, but full. She reached for his hand again. "Are you going after him?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. He'd thought about it endlessly in the blur of morphine and memory. Cade was still out there, circling the edges of his world like a vulture waiting for a heartbeat to slow. "Yes," he said finally. "It has to end." Elara's voice cracked. "And what happens to us when it does?" He looked away. "If I don't do this, there won't be an us. You can't heal with a gun in your hand." He smiled faintly. "You'd be surprised what I can do with one." She stood, her anger soft and trembling. "If you walk out that door, I'm not waiting by another hospital bed." He studied her, the only thing in his life not built on lies, and said quietly, "Then wait for me at home." 3 nights later, the city was a mirror of that first storm. The same bridge, the same rain, only this time Rian wasn't running. He parked the car outside an abandoned club on the city's edge, the place where his empire had been born and buried. Inside, shadows moved. He recognized them all, old faces, old sins. Cade stood at the center, a cigarette glowing between his fingers. "You came limping. Back, after all," he said. Rian stepped into the light. "You took my empire. You tried to take my life. But you should have known I'd come for my peace." Cade laughed. "Peace? You think men like us get that? Maybe not. But she does." "Ah!" Cade smirked. "The woman. That's your mistake, Rian. You gave her your weakness." Rian's voice was calm, but cold enough to crack stone. "No. She gave me something to live for." The room fell silent. The rain outside pressed against the broken windows like static. Cade drew his gun. "Then you die for her." Rian didn't wait for the first shot. Years of instinct, muscle, and ghosts took over. He moved fast, silent, precise, one step, one breath, one pull of the trigger. When the echo faded, Cade was on the floor, clutching his chest, blood spreading in a slow bloom. Rian limped toward him, the cane tapping like a clock counting down. "You could have stayed gone," Cade rasped. "I tried," Rian said, softly. "But the past keeps walking until someone stops it." He dropped the gun beside him and turned away. Outside, dawn broke pale and fragile. The storm had passed. A month later, the Velour moon reopened. The shattered windows were replaced, the mannequins restored. The city didn't know what had happened. It never did. It only whispered that Rian Sol was gone for good, and that suited him just fine. He moved quietly now. He still limped, but it no longer felt like a wound. Elara's apartment above the shop had become their small world, tea in the morning, laughter in the evenings, silence that no longer hurt. He helped her fold fabrics, brewed coffee for customers, and every so often caught himself smiling without reason. One afternoon, Elara called from the fitting room. "Rian, come here," he sighed. "What now?" "Try this on." He stepped out, holding the suit she'd made dark gray. Simple, elegant. It felt lighter than anything he'd ever worn. Elara's eyes softened. "You look new." He studied his reflection in the boutique mirror. The scars were still there, but his face was his again. Not the king, not the ghost, just a man. "I look alive," he said quietly. She smiled. "That's all I wanted." He took her hand, their fingers interlacing easily now. "You know what the funny part is?" he said. "For years, I ruled this city, and I never felt safe until I lost it all." "That's because you never had something worth keeping," she replied. "Now I do. Outside, the rain began again, gentle this time, the kind that blesses instead of destroys. They closed the boutique early and walked toward the bridge, the same one that had once ended him. The city stretched beneath, lights trembling on the water. Rian stopped halfway across, gripping the railing. "This is where I fell," he said. Elara leaned beside him. "And where you got up again?" He glanced at her, smiling. "You talk like you're writing the ending." "Maybe I am." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Then make it a good one." "I already did." Their foreheads met, and the city fell away. It wasn't a cinematic kiss, it was quiet, real, and steady, the kind that rewrites what it touches. When they pulled apart, the world was lighter. Rian looked down at the river and said, "I used to think I was broken beyond repair." Ilara's voice was soft. "You weren't broken, Rian. You were just waiting for someone to speak your name without fear." He laughed under his breath. "You make it sound so simple." "It is," she said. "Love usually is, when it's the real kind." They stood there until the lights flickered on below them, until the rain faded into mist. Then they turned and walked home, not as king and savior, not as haunted souls, but as two people who had finally stopped running. The next morning, the boutique bell chimed as customers entered. Rian brewed coffee, greeting them with a quiet ease that would have terrified his old self. Elara rearranged a display and called over her shoulder, "You're smiling again. Don't tell anyone," he said. Too late. He looked out the window, watching people pass normal, busy, alive. For once, he didn't want to own any of it. He was content to simply belong. And when the sunlight spilled across the counter, catching the faint lines of his scar, Rian thought of every man who'd called him unredeemable, every night he'd believed it. They were wrong. He was proof that even the darkest stories could end in light. Some men fight for empires, some fight for survival, but the rarest kind fights for peace. If Whispers of the Broken King touched you, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share it. Because somewhere, someone needs to remember no one is too far gone to begin again. Thank you for watching. Until the next story, keep believing in second chances.